I was going to do this as a double feature review. I was going to talk about CHiPs as well as a movie called Hit and Run from 2012. And the main reason was because both movies suffer from the same problems and they're actually made by the same person, the same director, writer, producer, star, Dax Shepard. But Hit and Run I saw a super long time ago, back when I still had Netflix, and we don't have it anymore. So I unfortunately couldn't get footage for Hit and Run, but I was able to get footage for CHiPs, so yeah, I haven't seen CHiPs until recently for the sake of this video, so yeah, let's talk about this movie that I'm pretty sure no one remembers.
We're the California Highway Patrol. This job is crucial. Without us out there,
Come on, what?
someone could get hurt!
California Highway Patrol think they have some crooked cops. They want you to go on the inside.
Go undercover within the department? That's awesome.
We put you with a rookie named John Baker.
So who am I playing?
Francis Llewellyn Poncherello.
Are the first two female names?
We don't know who in this department is in on this.
We're like Jay-Z and Beyonce. We are ride or die.
I'm Jay-Z.
We're in pursuit!
What's your 20?
I'm northbound! Punch is southbound!
This movie falls into two different categories that I've covered previously on Blockbusters show. We've got bad comedy. You know, we've done plenty of these like bad mid to late 2010 comedies like Get Hard and Hot Pursuit, and I would say this movie kind of falls into that category as well. It definitely feels like it's amongst one of those kind of movies. Just these utterly disposable, forgettable comedies that I don't think people really were that excited to see. And the other category is comedic adaptation of beloved old show from like the 70s or the 80s. Another movie that falls into this category that I talked about before was Land of the Lost with Will Ferrell, and there's been a bunch of these kind of movies. Like another one I've had my sights on for a while was that Lost in Space movie they did in the 90s, which wasn't an out-and-out comedy, but it was definitely silly and ridiculous. And there were a couple of other movies like that before, like there was the Brady Bunch movie, the Starsky and Hutch movie, like I said, Lost in Space, even though that doesn't really count as a comedy, but it had comedic elements to it. But this whole, let's take an old IP and try to revamp it as like a PG-13 rated R comedy, a lot of people would say that, yeah, 21 Jump Street was the reason that we got a bunch of movies like this. Because shortly after that came out, then we got like Baywatch, and of course this movie. I mean, shit, what's next? Rated R comedy version of Little House on the Prairie? John Baker and Frank Poncherello have just joined the California Highway Patrol in Los Angeles, but for very different reasons. Baker is a former motorbike rider who's trying to put his life and marriage back together. Punch is a cocky undercover FBI agent who's investigating a multi-million-dollar heist that may be an inside job. Forced to work together, the inexperienced rookie and the hardened veteran begin clashing instead of circling while trying to nab the bad boys. As for CHiPs, I have never seen the show. All I know is that it's like a late 70s, early 80s cop drama show. Very corny, very dated kind of show, but I bet it definitely has its fans. It's known for having Eric Estrada and his breakout performance in Cool Cat Saves the Kids.
Wow, Vivica. It's such a beautiful day.
Oh, it sure is, Eric. And where is Cool Cat?
There he is.
Like I said, 21 Jump Street was kind of the big reason a lot of these kind of movies were made, because that took an old cop show from the 80s that had a huge fan following, like the original 21 Jump Street, and they redid it as a modern-day raunch fest comedy. But the thing is, and I know I talk about these guys and liking a lot of their stuff, but Phil Lord and Chris Miller are two really funny guys, and they made 21 Jump Street a genuinely entertaining movie. Like, I remember when I saw the trailers for that, and I thought, oh, that looks kind of stupid. But then I saw it, I actually really liked it, and I even enjoyed the second one. The second one could have easily just been another run-of-the-mill cash grab, but it actually had a brain to it. It actually had a lot of really good self-aware humor, and it was something that was actually better than stuff like this, which just feels like, oh yeah, well, we'll take a popular IP and then slap it on top of some generic buddy comedy, and, you know, well, if we don't have any ideas for jokes, we'll just have characters say fucking shit and talk about dicks, pussies, and cum. That's funny, right? You know what? Sometimes that can be really funny. Sometimes, you know, lowbrow humor can be really funny, depending on who you ask. And if I'm in the right mood, I would say that sometimes I'd find it funny. But in this movie, a lot of the times I was just sitting there squinting and going, was that supposed to be a joke? Now, going off of the little research I was able to do with the original show, you know, that was just about two highway patrolmen. You know, you had one guy who was like the womanizer and the other guy who was more like the, you know, wide-eyed, bright-eyed, you know, Boy Scout of the two. And so they would get involved with highway patrol drama and other various run-ins with criminals and such. So they decided to shake things up for this one. The main duo in the movie are played by the director, writer, producer, star, Dax Shepard, and the other character who's supposed to be filling in for Eric Estrada from the original is Michael Pena. Now, Dax Shepard is not a great actor, but he's been decent in things. Like, he's been okay in some movies, even some comedies, which weren't even that great. I still thought he was okay in them. And I like Michael Pena a lot, even though, again, he often gets kind of typecasted or ends up in shitty movies, or like movies that are just low-hanging fruit. I generally do like the guy, but in this movie, they're both horribly, horribly miscast. Yes, the original show, you had a blonde guy and a Hispanic guy, but I don't know, Dax Shepard and Michael Pena, unlike, say, Jonah Hill and Channing Tatum in the 21 Jump Street movies, they don't really have a lot of chemistry, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on. The first big difference is, instead of just having it that these two guys are supposed to be run-of-the-mill highway cops and a cop duo, instead you have it that there's this whole backstory they establish for these guys, and that Michael Pena is like an FBI agent, and you see him like in his undercover work, and like he gets these like bank robbers or these like cartel guys to eventually like basically park themselves where the cops are going to be waiting for them, and then they get apprehended, and Michael Pena makes off some jokes about how, oh, he had sex with his his gang buddy's best friend's wife or whatever.
I figure you still owe me, you know, even after vacation and everything. Look at this. Your wife.
Which leads me to one of the many criticisms I got, and that really, aside from like 4 scenes where they have like gratuitous nudity and showing off chicks' titties and whatnot, and one scene where they show Bush, this movie really feels like it could have easily just been a PG-13. Like, if it wasn't for the fact that everyone just says fuck every other word in a few scenes, and that in particular, and some of the violence, which that's another thing I'll cover, but really, other than that, this doesn't need to be a rated R comedy. But this is to establish that, much like Eric Estrada in the original show, Michael Pena is supposed to be the ladies' man of the duo, and it just feels weird. Like, I mean, not to say that Michael Pena is like a hideous person or anything, but it was just like, when they have jokes about that kind of thing in like 21 Jump Street with Channing Tatum, it's like, okay, yeah, I get that. Michael Pena, he's not hideous or anything, but like, it's like in this movie, every time a woman sees him, they just become like wet for him and just like thirst after him relentlessly. And then you got Dax Shepard, who his character has a bunch going on. You have it that he's like really into motorcycling and motorbike sports, much like Dax Shepard in real life. But he's really into that, and he recently got separated from his wife. Like, his wife wants to leave him. And there's this whole stupid running thing where he's basically slowly getting pushed out of his own house, and she's like inviting her lovers over, and there's like this like weird, awkward interactions with them.
Hey, John.
Hey, Rick.
You working down at UPS now?
Oh, man, I'm a police officer.
That was just creepy and sad more than funny. But so while that's going on, he wants to try and win her respect back by becoming some kind of law enforcement. So, of course, because he's good with motorcycles, he wants to join the California Highway Patrol. And there's one scene with Maya Rudolph. She wasn't even credited. I checked, but she shows up and she's like some commissioner, and they have this like awkward back and forth, and she says that she wants to fuck him.
Okay, I'm a level with you, John. I like you.
Thank you.
You have nice eyes.
Thank you.
You remind me of my husband.
Thank you.
I get it's a rated R comedy. I get the joke that, oh yeah, cops don't typically talk like this, but this is what I'm talking about with the comedy in this movie. It just feels really like weird and uncomfortable, and not in like a funny cringe comedy kind of way. It just feels like they thought it was funny. They thought everyone was just gonna be like gut busting in their seats, and you're like, oh, that's supposed to be funny. That's just, what? That's typically how I was during a lot of this movie. Michael Pena is put on this job because, like I mentioned, he works with the FBI, and there's this dumb running gag where, oh, he shot his partner, and the guy is upset about it to like a cartoonish degree, but you understand why he's upset, because he got like an arm cast and he gets shot later on just because they thought it would be funny. And Michael Pena acts like it was nothing.
It's gonna take 2 surgeries just so I can lift my children again, you fucking
Whoa,
asshole.
that's a weird way to thank me for saving your life, buddy, but you're welcome.
Oh, shooting me was an act of kindness. You should
Absolutely.
allow me to return the favor.
Oh, yeah, but Hector's got your gun. How are you going to shoot?
Hey,
The point is, Michael Pena's boss in the FBI, they send him undercover to try and get some intel about this recent string of robberies that have been going on that might be connected to the California Highway Patrol. So he gets the fake name of, Frank Poncherella, or whatever the character's name is. Ponch, I'm just going to call him that. And, of course, he's paired up with John, played by Dax Shepard. I'm sadly blanking on the actor who played John in the original show, but he never shows up. Like, spoiler alert, I guess, for a movie from 2017. But, yeah, Eric Estrada shows up at the end, but the other guy, they didn't even ask him. I looked it up. I think it was on IMDb. I was just like, oh, they didn't even ask him to show up? Shit, at least Starsky and Hutch got both Starsky and Hutch to show up at the end. Holy shit, that's sad. Like I said earlier, for a majority of this movie, these two guys do not have chemistry at all. And for all I know, I think Dax Shepard and Michael Pena are actually good friends in real life, but you couldn't tell with this movie. I mean, they're both just bickering and bitching at each other, and it's not like, I'm gonna keep going back to 21 Jump Street, because that's the blueprint of how to do this kind of thing correctly. Like, in 21 Jump Street, it's a plot point that the characters are like polar opposites. You have one who's, not suave, but he is smart, and the other one is, trim and fit and good with ladies, but he's also not very smart. So, like, those two, they work well together. You could see that. And the actors seem to have really good comedic timing and chemistry with each other. And these two spend most of the movie just bickering with each other. And the sad thing is, there's this really good thing that they could have used to connect both these characters. And that Michael Pena, they establish, he's an FBI agent. He clearly is, he knows the law, and he's out in the field, and, he's seen the action. And they established that Dax Shepard, he's only good with motorbikes, but he's not really good when it comes to like what is the law or what needs to be done or protocol or anything like that. So you can have it that Michael Pena teaches him, in the classic veteran and rookie relationship, he teaches him how to be a good cop because of his experience in the FBI. Meanwhile, you also establish that Michael Pena is not very good with motorcycling. Fairly early on, they chase after someone and he ends up wiping out, which, admittedly, that's probably the one thing I kind of laughed at in the movie.
Northbound through Elysium Park. Punch is southbound.
It's not a good joke, but it was actually kind of funny. But I thought that was going to be a big plot point. I thought it was going to be, oh, he's not good with motorcycles, but Dax Shepard is, and maybe he teaches him how to get good with riding a motorcycle. So maybe that's something, they can both show each other the ropes in fields they're both respectively good at, and eventually at the end of the movie it would come around and be like, oh, they both learned something from each other, and oh yeah, teamwork and whatnot. None of that. There's like just none of that in this movie. In fact, when they actually start liking each other, it just feels really forced. It just feels so arbitrary. Like, when they're first teamed up together, you establish that Dax Shepard's character is basically a dumbass, and he doesn't know, like, when you should use force or whatever. Like, they pull over Ed Beasley Jr., who they catch speeding, but he has, like, some kind of, like, donor card that allows him to be speeding. in certain zones, and Dax Shepard is basically yelling at him to get out of the car, and then Michael Pena is yelling at Dax Shepard to, like, you know, stand down, don't be yelling.
You can't let this obnoxious prick go. No, you're getting back in the cop car. You're gonna get in the cop car.
Let go.
You let go.
Dude, he's
Okay?
old
No,
as fuck.
yeah, I know he's old and he's fragile. So stop fucking jerking on him, man. Get him, Francis.
And then they have these dumb back and forths all throughout the movie. I'll get to that because none of that was funny. But eventually, Michael Pena almost gets hit with a truck, but Dax Shepard saves him. But because he's still pissed at him, he punches him.
Dude.
That's for kicking my knee.
Then Dax Shepard's body just starts aching because of all, like, the physical force that they've been doing. So, like, he starts aching, and they establish that he takes a bunch of drugs because he has, like, medical conditions, and he even has, like, metal plating in his one shoulder. This becomes important later, but for now, he's aching, and he's staying at the house with his soon-to-be ex-wife who doesn't like him, barely wants to interact with him, but he needs to get to the bathtub so that, you know, he can get the aching to stop, and eventually he decides to call Michael Pena, and Michael Pena shows up, and of course he has to carry him while Dax Shepard is naked, and they put this all over the trailers apparently. When I watched the trailer I was like, they really thought this was a great comedic set piece, they wanted to advertise it, but yeah, eventually, like, when Michael Pena awkwardly has to carry him over to the bathtub, he, like, almost trips and his face goes, like, right into his crotch, and then he ends up dropping him and he goes flying and then landing in the bathtub.
I'm gonna argue semantics. Oh, no! Grab the curtain! Grab the curtain! Grab the curtain! Go!
And I guess after that, they're just like, oh, that was awkward, am I right? And I guess now they're finally starting to get on the same page. Seriously, that entire scene was just so awkward. I could just imagine, like, on the day of filming that, everyone was just awkwarded the fuck out. Like, everyone feels like they probably just wanted to get that scene over with and not bring it up ever again for the rest of the shoot. So slowly but surely, you start to find out that there are connections to these recent, robberies on the highway because of connections to the California Highway Patrol. There are crooked cops abound, and the main guy that you really need to focus on is played by Vincent D'Onofrio, who, despite being a good actor, man, he was giving it his all, but they gave him such shit material to work with. He's a member of the force, and they established a couple of other characters who later on, like, out of the blue, turn out that a majority of them are actually working with him as well. But for now, all you need to know is that it's him and, like, two other guys, one of which is his son, and another guy who works on the California Highway Patrol.
Don't jump! TJ!
They go to his house and they ask his wife, who's still grieving, some questions, and there's this really stupid, like, I couldn't even tell what the fuck the joke for this was. Like, Michael Pena goes in and tells Dax Shepard not to touch anything, and he notices that the lady's making a crock pot of something, and he, like, just, like, adjusts the lid.
I mean, I've known TJ for years, and I just can't imagine him jumping out of a helicopter. And plus, just I always wondered, like, was TJ...
And he looks down, and there's, like, a cat digging through a litter box, and he's just, like, looking at the cat while it's, like, ass is up in the air, and he just looks all disgusted. It's like, is he disgusted by the litter box or the cat's asshole? Like, I don't get it.
Absolutely not. He left behind a savings account. No debts.
Eventually you find out that this guy had some other real estate with this other guy who eventually, like, helps get them some information way later on in the movie. But I like how Dax Shepard's light bulb moment in the scene after they ask the lady the questions, he's like, oh, well, did you notice, you know, he's a member of the California Highway Patrol, and he didn't have a workbench or a gun safe.
Well, just it's weird that his wife moved on in a month.
In your expertise, she's moved on. How can you tell?
Well, there's nothing of his in that house. There's no commendations on the wall, no pictures of him and his buddies fishing. There's no tools. He was a helicopter pilot without a workbench or a toolbox. And no gun safe.
The thing is, those are good things to bring up, but, I mean, they were only in the dude's living room and kitchen. So, for all they know, they could have easily had those things in his garage or in his basement or in storage, maybe. Slowly but surely, they start to piece things together, start figuring out that Vincent D'Onofrio and all these other people are in cahoots, and they try to ask him stuff while he's at the gym, but he intimidates them, and that's when they're like, we gotta get our shit together. And obligatory shot of hot chicks' asses that you could put in the trailer as Michael Pena just starts thirsting after ladies.
We need to fucking focus right now.
Oh, hey, excuse me.
What?
Are you kidding me right now?
I want to point out, this is like probably almost halfway through the movie, and the movie feels like it's getting ready for its third act, but the movie is an hour and 40 minutes long. There was still like at least 40 minutes after that, and I was like, fuck, this movie feels like it should be ending. What the shit? But they get into a chase with Vincent D'Onofrio's character's son, and the son ends up getting decapitated because of an accident where they're speeding along and some kind of like, I forget what, like trick wire or something ends up sprawling across this bridge, and it takes his head clean off. And this basically motivates Vincent D'Onofrio to go after these two guys because he thinks they intentionally did it, even though it was all just a big accident. They didn't mean for it to happen. Anyway, Dax Shepard ends up getting hospitalized because he gets hit by Vincent D'Onofrio's SWAT truck, because of course he has access to that. And so while he's in the hospital, they establish that he has kind of a rapport with this one female officer on the team, who's of course not a bad guy. Meanwhile, there's this dumb comedic set piece where Michael Pena ends up sexting the wrong person. He ends up sexting like the captain of the entire California Highway Patrol, played by the mom from Malcolm in the Middle, which was just weird.
Wow, I didn't know you had those. Wow, those look huge. Those look big tonight. Wait. No.
They always look this huge.
Oh my God!
They start putting the pieces together. Vincent D'Onofrio ends up kidnapping Dax Shepard's, about to be ex-wife. And keep in mind, at this point in the movie, she basically has him kicked out of his home. So, he's still really trying to prove himself to her, even though she really wants nothing to do with him.
You're moving into my house, though, so no, I'm not your neighbor. This is my house.
No, this was Karen and Rick's house, and now it's my house because I bought it.
Vincent D'Onofrio ends up kidnapping her as leverage so that he can get the two of them out there. He lures them out to some secluded area near the desert, and of course the rest of the California Highway Patrol show up. Good cop lady, she turns out to be a good guy. A lot of the other ones are working for Vincent D'Onofrio. There's a big shootout, big action sequence. Michael Pena ends up getting his fingers blown off, or at least 3 of his fingers, which...
Okay, dude, it's not the official look!
By the way, already saw it in Me, Myself, and Irene, a comedy I would actually rather watch instead than this movie. But while this is all going on, they finally pay off the metal plating in the shoulder thing from the beginning, because they make a point of saying that at the beginning of the movie.
You've had 23 surgeries?
Yeah, I've had, feet, ankles, knees, shoulders, and I have a titanium humerus from here to here.
The movie goes on, you're not even thinking about that, and then they finally pay it off at the end, and you're like, oh, that's why they brought it up. Because Vincent D'Onofrio shoots, and it ricochets off the shoulder, bounces back, hits him in the head, and then he's dead. And the funniest thing about that whole scene is, even with them just saying it once or twice throughout the movie, it's not even the right shoulder. They couldn't even do something simple like flip the shot to make the continuity work. And fuck it, whatever. The movie basically ends with they go to the hospital. Dax Shepard and officer love interest, she just starts dry humping him in the back of the ambulance, which again, I guess it's supposed to be funny because people don't typically do that. And then we get the obligatory cameo from original Paunch, Eric Estrada.
Hey, that's looking really awful.
You want some morphine?
Ooh, that'd be nice.
And of course, they got to end the movie with a rap song that has the word California in the name. And honestly, this like ending footage of them just like rolling around to this song looks like it would have made a way more interesting movie. I know that they were trying to flesh this out to an hour and 40-minute movie, but seriously, they could have just easily kept the original premise of two bumbling, or I guess they weren't bumbling in the original, but just two bumbling highway patrolmen getting into a big, like, buddy cop movie adventure. It would have been way more simple, not including all this, like, you know, crooked cops, maybe keep that part of it, but like, you know, crooked cops hidden in the California Highway Patrol, and Michael Pena is part of the FBI, and then he eventually ends up getting fired later, and he says screw it, he wants to become a permanent member of the force, and all that shit, all the like ex-wife stuff, which, let's be honest, they only did that as an excuse to have Kristen Bell in the movie, because Dax Shepard and Kristen Bell are married together, and basically every movie that Dax Shepard does, he has to, it's the Adam Sandler effect, he has to include his friends and his wife in the movies. And yeah, I mean, even though they seem like a nice couple in real life, like their chemistry in this movie is just so awkward. I mean, yeah, I guess you want it to be like, oh, he doesn't get with her at the end, he finally stands up for himself and calls her kind of a dick.
Do you want me to ride in the ambulance with you?
Nah, I'm good. You're kind of a dick.
The two big things I wanted to highlight before going to final thoughts: the movie's production looks like a YouTube video. Like, the movie has a budget of $25 million, and the entire thing looks like a YouTube Red show or a YouTube Red movie. It looks like the kind of thing that, like, this was before 2020, this was before the big streaming boom. I've said this with a couple of movies I've reviewed previously on Blockbuster Show, but this really does feel like a movie that would be perfect for streaming services. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, it has an okay production value, and it has recognizable people in it, but it does not look like something that should go to theaters. But this was 2017, this is before every company out there had to have a streaming service, so it just kind of limped awkwardly to theaters, and no one really saw it. But really, the whole thing looks so cheap.
I see you run this house again, I will be in your ass with a boot.
The only parts of the movie that are okay are the scenes where they have the car chases, because Dax Shepard has made it no secret that one of his main reasons for directing movies is so he can have excuses to film, you know, motorbiking and motorcycles and sports cars and, you know, car chases and whatnot, because he's really into that kind of stuff, which, hey, perfectly fine. Like, I brought this up earlier with Hit and Run. Hit and Run was the exact same way. Hit and Run looked like a glorified student film for the most part, and then when it got to the parts with the car chases in the third act or whatever, those were probably the most professional looking thing, because he clearly cares about that more than he cares about making a movie with plot and comedy. Lots of obvious stuff like ADR, where they clearly went back and re-recorded dialogue over shots where no one was talking or on camera, so that way you could just dub it over after the fact. Like, there's this really awkward insert of it's when they're pulling up to do some investigating, and like neither of them are in the shot. Like, it just shows a car rolling in, come to a stop, and then they get out, and they just awkwardly insert this audio of like Dax Shepard chewing pills, and then Michael Pena's like, "Oh gee, you're really eating a lot of pills there, huh?"
Jesus, dude, you eat more pills than Elvis.
The first scene with Vincent D'Onofrio's character, when they're doing this like big highway robbery, it's clear that it's not really Vincent D'Onofrio, because the man, he's a bulkier gentleman, but there are several times where you just have what's clearly a double who's shorter and skinnier, like doing his like body motions, and then like he has like a helmet on, and until he lifts up the visor, where you can tell they filmed around it so that they could, you know, have him in the movie, like to fit around his schedule or whatever. But for the most part, it's just this double, and then they awkwardly like dub his voice over after the fact.
What are you doing, man? You and TJ skipped 200 grand off the last job. You think I wouldn't notice?
There's just a bunch of that all throughout this movie where it's like, it's just so cheap looking. Like, $25 million budget, and the best looking things in the movie are the car chases. It's like, shit, it's not worth it. And you get to the comedy. This movie is really lowest common denominator comedy. I mean, I said that like a lot of the humor was just them awkwardly stapling the word fuck onto everything. And while that is kind of annoying, it really feels like they could have trimmed that down to like a PG-13. I mean, I'm not the kind of person that complains about gratuitous language, but it's like, it really felt like when they had nothing, that was their last resort, was to just have people say fuck or shit. And it's like, that there was really nothing clever about it at all. But for the most part, this movie's worst offense to comedy is all the awful banter. I complained about that before so many times for reviews of comedy movies, but it seems to be this like new tradition where the people making the movie are not confident with their own writing, so they're just like, oh, well, you know, you guys just be funny and we'll figure it out in the editing room. We'll just use the best takes. But the best takes aren't even that good at all. I can just imagine in the script, it just says banter about this subject. And then Michael Pena and Dax Shepard just have this like awkward back and forth about certain things. They're in the locker room at the station, and Dax Shepard has like a button-up shirt on, and he's still in his underwear. And, you know, he's like, oh, I'm going to be your partner. Oh, cool. I'm John. Oh, hi. You can call me Ponch. They're about to shake hands. And then Michael Pena looks down, sees his underwear, and is like, oh, whoa, whoa.
Partners.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, let's kick this off with the real thing, man.
Oh, dude.
Okay. Hey.
Slow down a little bit.
Sorry.
That was a bit much.
If you're homophobic or whatever, that's cool.
No. What?
I mean, it's not cool to be homophobic, but I totally respect your right to be.
Wait, you think I'm homophobic because I won't embrace a man in his underpants that I just met? Is that your definition?
After having the 80-yard conversation about how Dax Shepard takes medication, Michael Pena just asks him how many times he shits a day.
I don't abuse my medication, you know.
Oh, I wasn't joking. No, I'm like, okay, how often do you shit?
Often do I shit?
Yeah.
The normal amount, like every 2 or 3 weeks.
It's stuff like that all throughout the movie. There's a part where he's like taking forever in the bathroom because Michael Pena was answering messages on his phone from the FBI, and at this point in the movie, Dax Shepard doesn't know he's part of the FBI, and like he accuses him of jerking off in a public bathroom, and this continues for like an entire scene. And
There's other goddamn reasons going to the bathroom.
Yeah, but for 20 minutes, I mean, even a prostate thing would be like, oh my God. Are you stroking yourself 3 times a day in communal bathrooms?
The worst instance of this, and this was one that they were apparently proud of because it's all over the trailer, was this stupid exchange, like shortly before the big chase that results in the guy getting his head cut off. There's a stupid exchange back and forth where they're talking about how Michael Pena and girls that he hooks up with are into eating ass.
Everyone's eating everyone's ass now.
There is no way everybody's eating everyone's ass.
Everyone's eating everyone's ass.
It's impossible. Everyone is not eating everyone's ass.
They are.
It really feels like it doesn't belong in a movie like this. The movie feels like it should have been PG-13, and for the longest time I thought it was until they started, you know, dropping the F-bomb every other scene, and it's like, okay, yeah, and the nudity too, and the violence. Like you see a guy just like get his head cut off, like, and blood splurting everywhere. It's like, Jesus, wasn't expecting that in a movie based on some corny 70s and 80s cop show. Wasn't expecting that. And that goes along with what I was saying earlier. 21 Jump Street at least had a self-awareness to it. It felt like it was taking inspiration from the original show from the 80s, but it wasn't trying to be like a direct reboot or whatever of it. It felt more like a parody of it. This feels like they wanted to do a direct reboot, kind of, but they also wanted to make it a raunch-fest comedy. It really feels like they didn't know what to do. I think if I were to compare it to any other movies I've talked about for Blockbuster Show, it's kind of smack dab in the middle next to the Land of the Lost movie and Hot Pursuit. Hot Pursuit I thought was arguably worse when it came to the comedy because that was even lamer. Like that was more like a wasteland of comedy. I at least chuckled at one thing in this. I don't think I did that once in Hot Pursuit. And Land of the Lost because it's another one of those movies where it's like, let's take a nostalgic IP and make it a wacky comedy. And it's just, it feels like it's this weird dead zone of like, are fans of the original show going to like this? I highly doubt it. And is anyone from like the new generation who's not familiar with the source material going to give a shit? The one backhanded compliment I will give this movie though, is that it still was better than Show Dogs. You know it's a low standard when the one thing you can say about the movie is that, hey, it was better than Show Dogs. Anyway, we have one more video for Blockbusters show in June, and we're going to be talking about an anime. We're going to be stepping away from movies for a little bit, but we're going to be talking about the ever controversial, ever insane and balls to the wall and unapologetic anime comedy series, Panty and Stocking. But until then, guys, I'm Adam Sykes of the Blockbuster Show, and we will see you guys in the next video.
Did you see that? That kid kicked sand in Cool Cat's face!